Well, welcome again to another edition of Christian Answers. My name is Pastor Jeff Short, and today we will be watching a video clip from a man named Ben Shapiro. And this young man is a graduate of Harvard Law School, and he writes for Breitbart online. And he was recently invited to attend a panel discussion on the Dr. Drew show on the CNN network. And Ben is a traditionalist Jew who speaks from a Judeo-Christian background, and he is defending the traditional family, traditional marriage, traditional male-female distinction against a progressive, radical, new vision for male-female relationships. And he does a good job, but he comments on that recent interview, and so we're going to watch that clip today. Hope you enjoy this commentary, and then at the end I will come back and close out our program. So let's watch the tape.
So I'm told that I'm going to be on this Dr. Drew show on CNN Headline News, and I ask who's going to be on the panel, because I always ask when I go into hostile territory, and CNN certainly qualifies for that. And they tell me there will be 6 other panelists. And I say, okay, fine. You know, that's fine with me. 1 on 6 makes it almost fair for them. So that's okay. We can do that. And I look at the list on the panel, and I look up everybody's bio, and they're all media figures. And one person happens to be a transgender woman, a man who transitioned over to being a female, if such a thing made any sort of sense. And and they put 3 chairs kind of off stage, facing the stage. And in those chairs, they put a black dude and this transgender woman and me. And they seat the 2 of us next to each other, the transgender woman and me, Zoe Tur and me. And, of course, I knew immediately that they're trying to spark something to happen by seating us next to each other. But that is not my interest. When I go on these shows, all I want to do is say my piece. I really have no interest in doing anything other than saying my piece. And as anybody who has ever seen me on TV understands, my typical goal when I'm talking with folks on the left is to have a calm and rational discussion, which almost never happens because the left is patently incapable of calm and rational discussion, as was eminently proved on the show last night, which was intensely wild. So the show begins, and they start with the Caitlyn Jenner issue. And Dr. Drew turns to me, and he asks me if Caitlyn Jenner deserved the award. And here's what I say.
Ben, does she deserve this award?
For what?
For courageously coming forward, for having been an athlete of great prowess, and now fighting a new battle.
What exactly is the battle? I mean, self-definition is what you do, and my baby's doing it at 18 months old. I wasn't aware that you get a medal for it. And after I say this, Dr. Drew sort of moves on to the rest of the panel, and everybody is sort of talking about the brilliance and wonder of Caitlyn Jenner. One of the people on the panel, the black guy, he says something about how Caitlyn Jenner is how Caitlyn Jenner does not deserve the award because Caitlyn Jenner is a rich white woman from the hills, which seemed odd because Caitlyn Jenner is a rich white man from the hills. And it always is weird to me when you have people who are willfully deluding themselves about things like, is Caitlyn Jenner a man? Okay, if you don't think Caitlyn Jenner is a man, then I dare you to date somebody who is exactly like Caitlyn Jenner as a straight male. If you think that Caitlyn Jenner is actually a woman, then I hope that you are perfectly willing to engage in sexual activity with someone who still has all of the male apparatus. Because that seems to be the argument that you're making. If gender is not only completely in the head, but also we're all supposed to recognize your version of your own gender, it's going to make things kind of awkward in the boudoir, to say the least. And all the time I'm sitting there thinking, this is a mental hospital. This is crazy. Caitlyn Jenner is a man. Caitlyn Jenner is genetically a man, biologically a man, has the genitals of a man, has the brain structures of a man. Caitlyn Jenner is a man. And we're all sitting here pretending Caitlyn Jenner is not a man. Why? Well, because it's politically correct to do so. So humoring the delusional is now not just politically correct, you will be punished if you do not. So all of this is going on. And finally, I break in, I say, why exactly are we mainstreaming delusion? And that's pretty much when everybody decides to go hyena.
Being brave is being yourself, and being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award?
65?
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Bruce Caitlyn Jenner. I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, hold on. Polite to the pronouns. I'll stop it there for 1 second. Polite to the pronouns. First of all, you can't be polite to words. Words are inanimate, gang. But this is the level of discourse that some of the panelists were engaged in. It's not polite to the pronouns. Okay, first of all, even if pronouns had feelings, I think that pronouns would probably want you to use their dictionary definition. For example, when I say chicken, I don't mean dog. I mean, fascinating, right? When I say about a noun, right? When I say chicken, I don't actually mean dog or cow or monkey. I actually mean like the animal known as a chicken, by all humanity known as a chicken. When I say he, I don't mean a woman who thinks she's a man. I don't mean a woman who had an appendage sewn onto her. I don't mean a woman who cut out her breasts. I mean a man. He. I thought all of this was kind of basic. But the left's perversion has gone so far that it's not even basic anymore. So it's disrespect. So let me get this right. I am disrespecting the pronouns by using the definition of the pronouns. But the folks on the left are not disrespecting the pronouns by using the pronouns to describe precisely the opposite of what the pronouns were established to actually say. If you like that, it evolves from there, gang. Forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train.
And everybody, oh, well.
She, I'm going to call her she.
We're not going to get on that train. No. And everybody jumps in. No, that's not me. I'm not going to say, because we all have to engage in the delusion. There's no social pressure, though, says Colin Coward. No social pressure at all. We're not on that train. No. We're not on that train. Okay, this is bizarre world, but it gets even more bizarre. Because then Dr. Drew, instead of answering the biological point, decides he's going to go to Zoe Tur. He goes to Zoe Tur, and Zoe, who used to be Mike, and is a man, who has had the transgender surgery, so inverted his genitalia and removed some of them, and has had hormone treatments, and all the rest of it, he goes to Zoe Tur. And that's when it starts to go off the rails, because instead of arguing the biology, instead of talking about the points that I was making, Zoe Tur decides to get insulting.
So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics?
No.
What are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Okay, so here's what's happening on the tape, in case you can't see it. Okay, so he says that I don't know the genetics, and I say, can we discuss the genetics? And Dr. Drew says, let's just discuss the brain scans. And I say to Zoe Tur, who's called me ignorant, I say, what are your genetics, sir? Now, what pissed him off, apparently, is the use of the word sir, because now I'm saying that he's a male. Mainly I'm saying this because he's a male. You know, like in objective reality, how he's a dude. I'm saying that not because I mean for it to be insulting. There are other males on the panel. I am a male. I had never been aware of the fact that to name a male was insulting. It is not an ethnic slur. It is not some sort of degrading thing. In fact, I call all males sir. Particularly when I disagree, I call them sir. And as Mike Tur, who has now renamed himself Zoe Tur, is a man, I called him sir. But this was too much. And so Zoe Tur, because I'm not engaging in the delusion together, see, it's not just enough to tolerate, folks. You must accept and celebrate. Zoe Tur turns to me, grabs me by the back of the neck with his left hand, grabs me by the back of the neck, pulls me toward him, and then threatens to put me in an ambulance. And all this time, nobody on the set's doing a damn thing, right? Nobody's doing anything. Everybody's just sitting there watching this. And, I mean, honestly, I'm taken aback because this is not normal behavior, okay? This has never happened to me before. Certainly not on national television. It's not normal behavior when you're in a conversation with someone for that person to threaten you with bodily harm while grabbing you. That's called battery. And in this case, it's likely assault and battery, since he was also threatening further bodily harm. And as I'll explain, that wasn't the only threat of the evening from Zoe Tur, nor was it the only threat of the next 24 hours from Zoe Tur. Clearly a mentally stable woman. By the way, this is how all women react. When women are deeply upset about something, I have 3 younger sisters, I have a wife, I have a mother, I have a daughter. When women react to things, I know that typically what they do is they threaten you with physical bodily harm. That's not male at all. No. That's a deeply feminine aspect. Later, I was talking to my mother, an actual female, and she had seen this, and she said, at that point, she said, you're not acting very ladylike. It did not occur to me to say that at the time, mainly because I was so taken aback by the whole situation that I was just kind of shocked. Now, what's amazing about this, and you'll hear it play out the rest of the show, what was amazing about this is that the media have now equated me saying sir to a guy and him threatening me with bodily harm while exerting himself in what is legally called battery. Battery is unwanted touching. When you touch somebody and you threaten them, that's battery. And for those who are wondering, yes, I fully intend on pressing charges, because you don't get to get away with battery and assault on national television, criminal threats on national television. You don't get away with that simply because you're a member of one of the left's beloved protected victim classes. No, you don't, because let me tell you something. If this situation had been reversed, and it never would because I'm a polite and decent human being, if this situation had been reversed, and I had grabbed Zoe Tur, a transgender woman, by the neck and said, I'm going to send you home in an ambulance, I would have spent the night in jail. I would have spent the night in jail, and I would have been prosecuted for hate crimes, and my career would be over. But Zoe Tur, no. The entire leftist media has come out to Zoe Tur's defense, saying that, after all, I had it coming, because I used the word sir. Amazing. And it just goes downhill from here. You'll hear me respond, and then you'll hear the entire panel jump in, not to say that it's wrong to threaten guests on a national television show with bodily harm, but to say that I had it coming, of course. Because after all, I hadn't respected Zoe Tur's truth. You know, as opposed to the actual truth, like the biological facts, the facts of life. I had not respected Zoe Tur's truth. And thus, I had to be castigated. And thus, if I were treated with bodily physical harm, that would have been totally fine, totally acceptable, and totally okay. Yeah, these folks on the left, they're big freedom fighters on behalf of free speech, aren't they?
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait, to be fair, but to be fair, you're actually being rude. And that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who's biologically a male is a male. Someone who's biologically male is a male.
But Mr. Shapiro, you knew very well that saying that to Zoe would be egregiously insulting.
It's not a matter of insulting or inflammatory.
It is. No, sir, you're right. On paper, what is a fact is a fact, and I can't deny that.
That was my personal favorite part of this entire routine. On paper, you're right. On paper, you're totally right. No, not on paper. In biology. Paper has nothing to do with it. On paper, Zoe Tur's probably a chick. In biology, Zoe Tur is not. On paper, you're right. It degrades from there. The entire panel decides that I am the bad guy, of course, because, of course, I'm the bad guy. I'm not a member of the victimized class, gang, don't you see? And as a non-member of the victimized class, that means that no matter what the aggression is on the other side, I must be one of the aggressors. In fact, I loved the headline over at The Wrap today. The headline at The Wrap said, Transgender activist, Breitbart editor-at-large, nearly come to blows. Well, no, not really. I mean, I didn't threaten anyone at any time, nor did I even imply that I would be interested in threatening anyone at any time, because I'm not interested in threatening anyone at any time. Someone grabbed me by the neck and threatened me on national television, but I guess we came close to blows, according to the mainstream media. Amazing. When asked for comment, they said that they didn't feel any need to correct the headline, of course, because they didn't want to, let their readers know the truth. Okay, so this continues. Rolando Watt was one of the people on the panel. I couldn't remember her name. This is the black lady on the panel. And she says we need to show tolerance.
There's some very startling statistics that are out that say that 80% of us know somebody who's gay or bisexual or even transvestite or lesbian. But only 1% of us know somebody who is in transition. So this is a new discussion for us. A lot of it is very scary for a lot of people. But that's, I think, whether we agree with the whole Caitlyn transition or not, the reality is that we are in a state as humanity right now where we need to exercise a little bit more tolerance. We need to understand the things that we don't understand a bit more. Instead of making inflammatory comments, maybe we have a little bit more tolerance.
Inflammatory comments. Okay, let me say something about tolerance. As I said earlier, no one is saying that if Mike Tur wants to cut off his genitals, that he can't do that. No one I'm aware of has ever said that. No one is saying that Caitlyn Jenner can't chop up his chest. But I am going to say that you don't get to change an entire society's definition of gender because it's convenient for your mental illness. Where's your tolerance for the rest of society? Why isn't tolerance run both ways? I mean, I'm happy to tolerate sitting next to a transgender activist and having a discussion. Apparently, the transgender activist is significantly less tolerant. Tolerance, you see, only runs one way. And naturally, this is how it goes. So, I say what I say. I say that Zoe Tur is a man because Zoe Tur is a man by any objective definition, meaning any non-subjective in Zoe Tur's head definition. And Zoe Tur then turns around and starts calling me names because this is the only thing the left can do. As I say in my book, Bullies, this is the only tactic the left has. You're uncaring, you're cruel, you're unkind, you're full of hate, you're mean, blah, 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 because you have no arguments. And also because you actually don't have compassion for other people. All you care about is making yourself feel good. All you truly care about is that unearned sense of moral superiority that comes along with pretending that everybody else is a hater gang. So here's Zoe Tur going after me. And again, the media portrays this as an act of defense against my brutal aggression in calling a man sir.
You have to deal with people like this, the hatred, the people that, that come out against you and say...
I'm calling you delusional. It wasn't because it's hate.
Yeah, that's hatred.
Okay.
Okay, and Dr. Drew jumping in, you call him delusional, that's hatred. No, it isn't. It's not hatred. As I've said on the program before, I have mentally ill relatives. I don't hate them. I love them. They were delusional when they were mentally ill. They know that. And you don't pretend delusion doesn't exist. Honest to God, if this were the case, if labeling somebody delusional meant you hated them, every doctor on planet Earth is a hater because virtually every doctor has had to deal with a delusional patient and inform the delusional patient that the patient is delusional. Virtually every psychiatrist has to do this. Do doctors hate their patients, or are they trying to help them by not engaging in a delusion? I'm not sure where Dr. Drew went to medical school, but it seems to me that probably sometime in his practice he had to inform somebody that what they were experiencing was not real. That perhaps they ought to be on psychiatric drugs, for example, because they were experiencing delusions. Did he hate them? Did he hate them? According to Dr. Drew, I guess he did. I guess he hates everybody.
This is just somebody that's
I don't hate you. I have sympathy for you. I feel terrible for you.
No, you do hate. You're consumed with hatred. That is who you are. You're a little man. You know me? You're a little man.
And this is how it goes, right? Here's this guy trying to emasculate me. You're a little man, as though this is emasculating to me. Right, and you're a large man who thinks he's a woman. So what? Is this supposed to get my goat somehow? Because it doesn't. My physical stature is of no consequence to this particular conversation. And this notion that I'm full of hate because I want to see people pursue actual cures, actual treatments that work. I mean, I say this to Dr. Drew later on the panel. This entire conversation has shut down any possibility of trying to find actual solutions for people who suffer from gender identity disorder, which is a much better label than gender dysphoria, which means nothing. Gender dysphoria is a politically correct nonsense label from the DSM-5. Gender identity disorder, which is what this was called up until 2013, is a significantly more appropriate label for what we're talking about here because it is a gender identity disorder. The problem is not with your genitals. The problem is in your mind. But, Zoe Tur just calls me names, and according to the left, this constitutes Just a brilliant defense.
Yeah, actually, I do.
Let's stick to the topic. Let's not these first.
But I mean, that's okay. He can be whatever he wants. But the point is,
right? That's what this is all about, isn't it?
It is.
Isn't that what this is all about? Let's all come together. He can be whatever he wants. Well, no, that's not what you were saying 5 seconds ago when you were threatening to beat me up. It's not what he would say 5 seconds later either. When I'll fast forward a little bit, when Zoe Tur, after both segments were over, there were 2 segments during the break. No one would look at me, right? Because I had said the unsayable. I had said that a man is a man. Ooh, cruel, inhumane, brutal. I said a man is a man. That means no one can look at you. And one of the other panelists, the black fellow who is sitting next to you, Zoe Tur, turns to Zoe Tur and says, well, I'm sure he felt the same way about black people in the 1930s. And I actually stopped him. I said, what are you talking about? Why would you possibly say that? What a nasty and cruel thing to say. Of course, he ignored that because this is what the left does. Remember, if you're part of the victimizing class, it doesn't matter what you say or what you do or what truths you are spouting. All that matters is you are the victimizer, no matter even if you are the victim in a particular setting. So during the break, the producers are all hovering around Zoe Tur. Are you okay? Are you okay? Can we move your seat? One of the producers kind of sidles up to me and says, are you okay? I say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm all right. And the next segment begins. Okay, so the segment ends. Fast forward, the segment ends. And Zoe Tur turns to me as he is leaving the set, because I have a couple of more segments on Donald Trump. Zoe Tur turns to me as he's leaving the set. And Zoe Tur says, I'll see you in the parking lot. And I said, no, you won't. And Zoe Tur leaves. Now, after all the segments are over, I go outside. The producers are all kind of, one of the guests, who shall remain nameless, sidles up to me and says, you know, you were right. I said, yeah, I know I was right. And she's whispering, I know, you were kind of right there. I said, yeah, no, I know. I'm aware. One of the producers comes out from backstage, whispers, you know, you were kind of right there. I said, yeah, I know. But everybody has to whisper it, you know, because if you say it out loud, ooh, you never know what ramifications that could carry. So the producers say, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. I'm okay. And they say, well, I said, you know, he did say, I mean, you heard him. He said it pretty loudly. Other people heard. He said that he was going to meet me in the parking lot. Do we know that he's left? Not because I'm particularly afraid of this particular human being. Even if he happens to be a very macho man, I've a fair bit of foot speed. So if worst came to worst, I could always flee using my bravery. But in any case, I said to them, you know, I don't want to see the headlines in tomorrow's paper, conservative pundit beats up transgender activists in parking lot. I just don't see that going well. So can you please check that he's left? So they check the key cards and they say he's left. And then they have security escort me out to my car because they say, I was fine with the key card check. They said, we'll have security escort you out to your car just in case. So they have security escort me out to my car because this is how the tolerant left operates, folks. The tolerant left, when it comes to facts they don't like, they're not so tolerant, it turns out. Speaking of which, this whole debate continues, and after Zoe Tur calls me a little man, which, by the way, I'm not sure why that's supposed to be an insult. Zoe Tur, by the way, would later go on Twitter and threaten to curb stomp me, which for people who don't know what that is, curb stomping is where you force someone, if you've ever seen American History X, somebody does this in the movie, it's horrifying. It's where you force somebody to place their open mouth on a curb. You bite the corner of a cement street curb, and then the assailant stomps on your head. So Zoe Tur threatened to do that on Twitter. And what was the justification? I love this. Zoe Tur tweets out, quote, somebody tweeted out to Zoe Tur, transgendered people shouldn't be threatened with violence. I agree, which is why no one did that. But those who disagree with their views should be. And that was a sarcastic tweet from somebody. And Zoe Tur writes back, being called sir and mentally ill is violence. So you see, if you're called sir, that is the equivalent of grabbing somebody by the neck, threatening to put them in an ambulance, and then later on Twitter threatening to curb stomp them. These are all equivalent. And the media buys into this. The media love it. The media, it's all the same. They're both bad. Moral equivalent. Cycle of violence. You see, folks, if you refuse to buy into the delusion, what you really deserve is to be physically pummeled. Zoe Tur finishes up his little routine.
Yes, it is. But there's ramifications for hate speech. But the point is that...
ramifications?
let me finish.
Go ahead, finish, Zoe.
Little boy.
Zoe.
Okay.
Zoe.
So,
I'm sorry.
Civil. It's all everybody. Come on.
Oh, let's keep the conversation civil. Everybody? Everybody? What is this everybody routine? And suddenly the emotions kick in, and Samantha Shacker, who is one of the people who is on the regular Dr. Drew panel, she jumps in and precisely and goes immediately insane. It sounds like this.
And at the end of the day, can you look at the fact that more than 50% of transgender youth attempt suicide because of discrimination, because of shame? Does that try to alter the way that how you should project your thoughts? What if they're watching right now? What if there's a teen out watching right now that is struggling with who they are, living their truth?
Let's talk about some of the biological facts for 1 second.
No, I want you to answer me. What would you say to a teen right now that really believes 100%?
Allow me to answer your question.
I'm full of emotion right now because people die.
I've noticed.
Clearly, it doesn't bother you because you're sitting there stone-faced and cold-hearted.
Of course it bothers me when people commit suicide, which is one of the reasons I don't believe that transgender surgery is the solution, considering that the suicide rate after transgender surgery is precisely the same as the suicide rate before transgender
Yeah, because then technically they're not passing, and then they're open for more discrimination.
Okay, the transgender suicide rate is approximately 0.8 in every 100. The only comparable suicide rate in human history of which I am aware is Jews living under Austrian and German rule during World War II. To liken the treatment of transgenders in the United States or the Western world to Jews living under Nazi... No, I'm actually comparing apples to apples in terms of the suicide rate.
But logic did not triumph, folks. The argument that I'm making there is incredibly simple, right? The argument that I'm making there is you say society causes transgender suicide rates to be that high. First of all, it's not 50%. It's 0.8 in every 100 transgenders try to commit suicide on an annual basis. Over the course of life, supposedly 41% of transgender people will attempt suicide at some point. The left says this is all because people are mean and say he instead of she. So if Zoe Tur goes home tonight and kills himself, then that would be my fault for saying, sir, that would have nothing to do with the mental illness that caused Zoe Tur to cut off his own genitalia. Astonishing. And so the point that I'm making is, well, if you're going to blame it on society, if you're going to suggest that society is responsible for all of this, then wouldn't you also have to suggest that the societal treatment of transgenders is the same as the Nazi treatment of Jews, because that's the only comparable suicide rate in human history. Slaves in America in the 1840s didn't have this kind of suicide rate. So are you really claiming that transgenders are treated worse by society than slaves were? Or just about the same as Jews were in Nazi Germany after the beginning of World War II? Is that what you're claiming? Because in order to say that transgender folks are completely normal, mentally speaking, there's no mental illness whatsoever, and their mental illness has nothing to do with their suicide rate, you have to blame it on society. And the only times in human history that we have seen a society cause high suicide rates is when the treatment is as bad as the Nazis toward the Jews. So, really? But logic, again, would not triumph because, of course, truth is hating now.
Well, so that is a dramatic illustration how intolerant tolerance can be. And so we're going to talk more about this in the future, but I hope that you enjoyed that clip. I hope it was informative, and we'll see you back here in another edition of Christian Answers. God bless.